A note of warning. This podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Welcome to True Crime Daily, the podcast. I'm Billy Jensen. This is Owen Michael, bringing you our weekly True Crime Daily podcast for the week of February 21st, 2019. And this week we're covering cold cases, DNA tests, and genealogy websites, one of my favorite topics in the true crime universe. A horrifying adoption case of Grace Packer in Pennsylvania. But first up, though, we have a triple murder in Michigan.
We do have a triple murder in Michigan this week. It just came out. We're getting some new details and information as we go. A woman and her three daughters were found shot dead in Michigan on Monday, about 30 miles north of Grand Rapids. And it's kind of a rural area of Michigan. The Kent County Sheriff says Aubrey Ann Moore, who was 28, picked up her two older daughters, 8 years old and 6 years old, from school and took them out to lunch with the youngest daughter, her third daughter, who's 2 years old. Investigators say she then took the girls to a wooded area after lunch and shot each of them with a bolt-action hunting rifle. Then she put the girls' bodies in her vehicle and drove right down the street to another location, which was her boyfriend's house, and she turned the gun on herself. Her boyfriend found them.
And it was his rifle. The youngest girl was actually his daughter, and they were all in the vehicle. In 2018, the girl's mom, she was involuntarily hospitalized and diagnosed with unspecified schizophrenia, so I guess she was 5150'd, and psychosis, but was not determined to be a threat to others, and she was discharged at the end of September. So who knows? I always wonder about the discharge. You don't want to speculate, but this is one of those cases where you have to look into it. What happened? Was there follow-up? The way that we deal with mental illness in this country is usually an abomination, and this could be what happened. And, was there follow-up? Was she on her meds? Was there, consistent follow-up when you discharge these people? Because if you're involuntarily hospitalized, if you're 5150, if they say this person is a threat to somebody or society or whatever, or a threat to themselves, and you put them in a hospital, you're not going to get ready and get fine within,
we should say
3 or 4.
5150 is the official law enforcement designation for being hospitalized against your will.
It's also a title of a Van Halen album. But
I figured maybe that's another thing that maybe is outside of half of our audience.
Half of our audience. The
memory.
YouTube audience does not remember.
There were some red flags, though. There were red flags, but she was not deemed to be a potential harm to herself or others when she was released. There were reports, though, that she thought that the girls were in danger. She said the TV told her that there was going to be a school bus accident one particular day. She apparently wasn't sleeping much because she was paranoid that there were people trying to break into her house. And she thought her food was being poisoned. So these are sort of some of the classic hallmarks of schizophrenia and that kind of thing.
There was no record of child abuse. There was no indications that anything was wrong when she picked the girls up from school. But again, there were warning signs there. There were red flags, and
taking them out to lunch almost seems sort of ceremonial, like, I know this is going to happen. Obviously, it seems like there's some premeditation here, but we're going to have a nice lunch together, spend the day together. This area where this happened was kind of like I say, it was rural. It's in a kind of a wooded area. Mm-hmm. It's tragic.
And you see that a lot. I remember that guy that killed his son in the Los Angeles area. I think he took him to Disneyland.
That's right.
Remember that case? And then he brought him up
he gave him a whole day.
north of LA, and then buried his body
up into the Santa Barbara area there. Yeah, and that was to get revenge on his wife.
Yes.
Obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. It seems like there's a little mental imbalance going on there, but that was a separate thing. But killing your kids and convincing yourself how to do that may be the difference here between psychopathy and schizophrenia. So
and follow up. This is when we talk about true crime, we talk about what there's no more serial killers like there were in the 70s and everything like that. The psychopaths or the sociopaths have turned into something else, and it's because there's a lot more guns around, and the idea that you can get a higher body count. So there's this woman killed her family. She easily could have gone and been a female serial shooter and shot up a school or something like that. It's the way that we deal with mental illness in this country is not good. There's no or very little follow-up. I would like to see what happened in this case as far as what the follow-up was. But, at the end of the day, it's hard. It's hard to police, 300 million people. There are some of them that do have mental illness, but
there's no silver lining here whatsoever. But
No.
the fact is that she seemed like she was trying to protect them, and I'm gonna take you all to a safe place rather than take out my miseries on the world or something like that. You know, it was a protective thing, but it's a tragic story.
All right, in slightly happier news, we have another person ensnared in the familial DNA web. This started with Joseph D'Angelo, a case that I've covered a lot.
Also known as
the Golden State Killer,
and
allegedly the Golden State Killer, and the East Area Rapist, and the original Night Stalker.
right.
He was caught with familial DNA. He was the first. There have been now
the first?
close to 40. Yeah. Well, the Canal Killer in Phoenix was actually, he was zeroed in on because they got his last name through a familial database, and then they took the last name and were able to look at the list of suspects and said, oh, there's a Miller right there, and then they narrowed it down like that. But doing a one-to-one,
As far as the site,
doing a one-to-one thing and
online
using the sites, and, he was really the first. So this is a Minnesota cold case. Her name was Jeannie. Jeannie Ann Child. She was 35. She was found stabbed to death in her Minneapolis apartment in 1993. And the murder scene was an apartment in an area known for prostitution. She had multiple stab wounds. She had, there was blood covering all the walls.
A very bloody scene.
Bedroom, living room, bathroom. The bathroom flooded as the shower was left on. And there were finger, palm, and footprints found in the apartment, and there was DNA left at the scene, but they couldn't find anybody.
Something that I'm struck with, too, is that, we think about the shortness of this, but 1993 seems like on my radar that we were already solving crimes like this, but we take it for granted. The DNA thing basically, was on the map, but as far as identifying this stuff, you can.
Well, you need another sample. So if there was another sample in the system, so you're going to go through the database, and they hadn't built a database by that time. Probably they were when they were solving stuff with DNA, they were saying, we think this guy did it. We think Owen Michael did it.
It's like matching.
Give me your DNA, and then
exactly.
we're going to match one-on-one. It wasn't this sort of, we have a haystack and we're going to go looking for it. Which is the reason why it's so exciting for stuff like this. So
it's a haystack with distinguishing characteristics, so it's a lot.
So a Minneapolis homicide detective and an FBI agent reopened the case in 2015 because of advances in DNA testing.
Which a lot of cops are doing these days.
Which we love that, and more cops need to be doing it. And they ran the DNA from the murder scene through a public online genealogy site. They didn't specify the site, but I'm sure it was GEDmatch, because that's the biggest one out there. Again, you cannot use 23andMe, and you can't use Ancestry.com. If you want to be involved in this kind of thing, what you need to do is get your DNA done, spit in the tube, get it from 23andMe and Ancestry.com. Then you have to take that information and then put it into GEDmatch. And we'll actually put the instructions on how to do that.
Is this like you did 23andMe, right?
I did both, actually.
And so, is there a privacy issue?
It's a privacy issue. It's the
can't be shared with law enforcement.
The terms of use for those two companies are because of that. So, but
is GEDmatch strictly for law enforcement?
No.
Would I sign up for it?
No, GEDmatch is kind of like genealogy website aficionados, or people that are really into trying to figure out who they're from and where they're from and everything like that. So. That's what was used for a Golden State Killer. That's what's being used for everything, and that is an open site. So. They indicated, when they did this, they indicated that a man named Jerry Westrom was a possible suspect. So they track Westrom down, and they follow him to his daughter's hockey game in Wisconsin.
It's hockey country.
And
his daughter plays hockey, which is wonderful.
Which is great. They grab a napkin that he used after that he threw in the trash after eating a hot dog. The rule number one: any self-respecting hockey fan is going to use his sleeve. He's not going to use a napkin. So I'm glad he got caught with that.
I feel like hot dogs are not really the right thing to eat at a hockey game anyway. Besides, who eats at a hockey game? I mean, we live in L.A. The Kings is a little bit more luxury.
Yeah, but honestly, no. Peanuts, a high school hockey game or a pee-wee hockey game in Wisconsin, I don't know how good the food is going to be there, though. But that's what they did, and that's what you have to do. Once you get this match, and this is what they did with D'Angelo. They had to at the Golden State Killer case. They had to follow him around, and they were waiting for him to come out of his house. And he actually didn't leave for a while. They followed him to two ways. First, they got a little bit of DNA, but it wasn't good enough when he went to Hobby Lobby. And then they got him. He threw out a tissue in his garbage, and then they got it, and then they matched it up.
What kind of DNA did they find at the Hobby Lobby? Do you know offhand?
I think it was off his car. Something along those lines, yeah. So, and we've seen a lot of these cases. Most famously, Lonnie Franklin, who they had gotten already, they got it off of a pizza crust. Now, he was the Grim Sleeper case, which was a serial killer.
Famous LA case, and they actually had undercover cops working as busboys in this restaurant because they were tracking him, and he basically threw away a pizza crust that he had eaten, and they got his DNA off of that way. But they never identified, they never said, and in fact, that was, 2014, 2013, it was several years ago. And we've even got more advances since then. This one in particular, they matched him right away as soon as they got the napkin on this one, and they've been pretty public about it.
Yeah. So he was arrested at his office about 75 miles from Minneapolis. He's 52 now. He appeared in a Minnesota courtroom last week with his wife and children and 20 other supporters who showed up to support him. And members of the victim's family, Jeannie Childs, were also at the hearing.
He claims he has an alibi. He said he didn't know Jeannie Ann Childs, and he says that he never had sex with any women in Minneapolis in 1993. 1993 is a long time ago.
Yeah.
Maybe he went through, who can say? But that's his alibi so far. He doesn't know how he could have gotten mixed up in this.
Right.
But science is science. He did post $500,000 bail, though, and was released, and his next court date is in March. His lawyer said, the guy's been living in Minneapolis for decades. He's not a flight risk. So, the court obviously took that into consideration. I don't know. Do you have any feeling?
It was a single case. I don't think I would like to see where they got the DNA evidence left at the scene. It's actually very important that he stated that he did not have sex with any women in Minneapolis in 1993, because that means that the idea that he said, if he was going to say that if she was a sex worker and he was one of her clients from beginning early in the day, he could have used that as an example. And he deposited some semen in her. She went off and had a couple other dates, and then one of those killed her. That was going to, but him coming right out and says this, that throws that out the window. So
which
now
is a poor legal argument.
Yeah. Yep.
Even if you're going to lie about it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well,
so,
lawyers
but I mean, one of the things that I keep thinking is that. So we've gotten, since April 25th of last year, when it was announced that Joseph James DeAngelo was captured, we've gotten almost 40 now that we've been ensnared with DNA. And these are all cold cases. These are all older cases. And our public service announcement for today is, if somebody that you know at work or a family member just decides to leave the country, this is going to happen because these guys are scared. Remember, there's 215,000 unsolved murders in America since 1980. Every one of these people who have been involved, particularly in a sex crime, not necessarily a gun crime, but some sort of a sex crime, an up-close crime, they're sweating right now. And they're thinking it's only going to be a matter of time before they get to me.
We've had two just this week alone, and I wasn't familiar with either one of these cold cases, but one in particular, there was the
one in Newport.
James Allen Neal for the unsolved murder of Newport Beach, a girl. I didn't write her name down, unfortunately. She was kidnapped and found dead the next day in Newport Beach, California, which is an extremely affluent area of south of Los Angeles, in 1973. And then there was another one, Edward Donnell Thomas was arrested in Pomona, another L.A. suburb here, both Southern California joints, for an unsolved 1990 murder of an 11-year-old boy, William Tillett, who was kidnapped and killed in Inglewood, which is yet another suburb of Los Angeles. They didn't specify any details, but Inglewood police did say this week that they made this arrest based on old evidence and advanced technology. So it sounds like
it's that, yeah.
It's
and
related to that.
The girl from the story in Newport, her name was Linda Ann O'Keefe, and she was. They did something very interesting with her case too. The police department last year got on Twitter and actually started telling her story in her own voice. And this has been done a couple times before. That coupled with, there was actually a couple students who had gotten involved in the case and really was trying to push it forward. And think about that. Think about what you did 45 years ago for any of our listeners who might be that old. 1973, can you remember anything? I mean, that's a long time ago, and this guy, is he remembering every day when he took this girl, when she was walking home, when she vanished, when she was walking home from summer school? These guys are sweating, and look out for them. Any extra perspiration on any of your coworkers who might be of a certain age, anybody that's planning trips and not going to come back, I'm telling you, this is going to happen. We're going to start seeing a lot more of this.
That is something I hadn't thought of, and you make a great point there. So, keep that in mind.
No,
People.
don't use it as a travel agency idea for you, because I know you like all of your get rich quick
I do
schemes.
have several travel agents that I still use in my Rolodex.
No, but I was just
that I
thinking
call
like
on the
you would start
telephone.
a travel agency for. Did you get in trouble in the past?
Look,
And, we don't want
I'm
to
an
have that happen.
entrepreneur, or I haven't been yet, but
All right, let's.
There's an
That was
opportunity
a
there.
good, obviously a bad story that turned into a good story. We're going to see a lot more of those, but we're getting to our last story of the day, which is Grace Packer, a Pennsylvania man pled guilty this week, and it's a gruesome case involving an adopted daughter, a foster mom, and this unspeakable sexual fantasy. Owen, you take this one.
Yes, this one is pretty awful, but there's a small measure of justice developing now. Grace Packer was a 14-year-old girl. She was killed in 2016. She was beaten, raped, bound, and gagged, and left to die in a hot attic in Pennsylvania, outside of north of Philadelphia, by Jacob Sullivan. Sullivan came back the next day. She was left for dead in this hot attic. He found her still alive, and then he strangled her. It's alleged that he and his girlfriend, who was Grace Packer's adoptive mom, Sarah Packer, they both stored this girl, Grace. They stored her body in cat litter for months. Then they dismembered her and they dumped her in a remote area where hunters found her in October of 2016.
Yeah, and the cat litter thing, I've seen that before. Terry Rasmussen, remember the Allenstown 4 case? We know that he killed them. He had actually killed somebody in a woman named Ansoon June, who he had married, put in quotes because it wasn't actually legal, but they did have a ceremony. And when the officers got to his house and were searching for her because she had gone missing, they found her under, I think it was 75 pounds of kitty litter. So that's what, because it does mask the smell. That's the entire thing for kitty litter. So that's why he did that. And they think that he was sort of just had her there in the same way these guys did. They were trying to mask the smell with the kitty litter, and then eventually they would dispose of the body some way.
So as if that's not bad enough, and it is. It's horrifying and it's awful. Apparently, this whole thing was part of a rape-murder fantasy that they shared together, Jacob Sullivan and Sarah Packer. The other thing is Sarah Packer was basically a professional adoptions person. She was a foster mom. She'd cared for dozens of children with her first husband, who went to jail for abusing two of the girls, one of whom was Grace.
So how does that happen?
She was also a county adoption supervisor in this area of Pennsylvania before she lost her job due to her husband. That's sort of it's a horrible black mark on the record there. But she still had custody of Grace when this happened. She's going to testify against Jacob Sullivan. She's already taken a plea deal, and she's going to serve life in jail. And Sullivan, who's 46, he pleaded guilty this week. The jury's they're going to determine whether he faces a death penalty or life in jail. We will see how that goes. But this is a catastrophic, a colossal failure of the adoptive system.
Yes.
And I hear a lot of horror stories of this stuff. I know a couple of social workers, and I don't know what the solution is. There's so many horror stories like this across the country.
More oversight. It's 2 stories. 2 out of the 3 stories are follow-ups and oversight that we just did. So, all right, we have an update, and then we'll get into comments. The update is, remember the tiger?
I do remember the tiger.
All right. The tiger actually...
By the way, for some background, go ahead.
Sure, we can. Okay, so the tiger that we talked about last week, a guy broke into a house in order to
actually
smoke
a
weed.
woman.
A woman broke
It
into
was
the
a
house.
woman. I saw the thing.
Okay, a woman broke into a house to smoke weed in Houston, and she found a tiger. And she called the police, which was nice of her. But the tiger, who's nicknamed Tyson after the movie The Hangover, was discovered in the garage of this abandoned home. We wanted to let you guys know that it has been transferred to the Cleveland Armory Black Beauty Ranch in Murchison, Texas.
So like where the dogs go to the farm?
It has it's 5 acres, naturally wooded habitat. There's 800 other animals, including 2 tigers. So the good news is that Tyson, this is a happy ending story.
Still don't know why the owner left this tiger in a cage in the garage with food, by the way. It was not like this tiger was emaciated. It was kind of chilling.
Yeah.
And again, we don't know whether there are charges yet for this Good Samaritan who did nothing wrong other than breaking into an abandoned house and smoke weed.
I agree.
With their friends.
All right, so the last thing, a disturbing trend, the 48-hour challenge. What is it? Why are kids so stupid?
I'm not a parent. I'd like you to speak to that particular thing. The basic outline is we have had a series of challenges, social media challenges over the years. Some of them have been good, like the Ice Bucket Challenge, which raised money for a good cause. This one, we've also had the Kiki Challenge, where you may have seen this online. Somebody filming themselves getting out of their car to dance to the radio as the car moves along slowly.
That was a bad one.
Getting various ones of this. This one is a little more forensically designed. This one challenges teenagers or kids or whomever to remove themselves from from their family or the public or whatever for about 48 hours to basically get themselves missing. And they get points for every time there's a news report or a social media a plea for information. Whereas the child, please, my child is missing. Ha ha, ha
Yes.
ha.
So,
it's awful. I don't know if am I?
No,
explaining
that's
that
pretty good.
properly?
No, that's good. So True Crime Daily, we've got one of the biggest, most active Facebook communities, and a lot of people had a lot of things to say about this. I got a case that will make you go missing because I'll beat my kid's ass for disappearing for 2 days, and CPS will make them disappear. There's a lot of angry parents there when they heard this. Your name's definitely going to show up on social media when I'm done with you. Become a missing person for Facebook likes. Jesus, people, please stop buying iPhones for your 12-year-olds. At least when I was a teenager, we did stupid stuff for fun and not for Facebook likes. Which...
Just to smash pumpkins on Halloween.
Yeah, I guess it's something like that. So,
It was a challenge.
and another person said, let the kids pay restitution for all man hours wasted on this nonsense. Let's hope this goes the way of all the other challenges like the Bird Box Challenge and all that stuff. And
Hopefully it's old news by the time
you're reading this or,
Yes.
or listening to this. Yes, exactly. So that is it. That is all we've got. If you want to hear any more information about any of these crimes, we post a lot of them on truecrimedaily.com. Go to our Facebook page. You can check out our Twitter. It's all True Crime Daily. So until next week.
We've also got long-form true crime coverage on YouTube.
Oh, that's true.
We'd
That's
like
right.
you
Our
to check
YouTube
that
page.
stuff out.
That's right.
We've got a wealth of
You might be
stories.
watching this on YouTube right now.
Indeed.
So until next week, this is True Crime Daily, the podcast, reminding you,
Don't do crimes. Don't do crimes.
because you'll get caught and we'll talk bad about you in front of everybody. So, I'll see you next week.
Don't do crimes.